Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Etech Leadership Table. This is a podcast where we invite you to pull up a chair, grab a cup of coffee, and join us as we tackle some remarkable discussions on everything leadership. I'm Melissa Wood. I'm your host. I'm the Dean of Leadership Development at Etech Global Services. Hello, Etech podcasters, and welcome back to our very own Etech Leadership Table. You heard it in the intro. It's for leaders, by leaders, sharing their wisdom on everything customer satisfaction. Today, our topic, you're gonna be loving this one. It is, can your business hear the whispers before the scream? Melissa, what are you talking about? The whispers before the scream. It's customer satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Can your business hear the whispers before the scream? And look at who I have at the table with me today. I love sitting around the table. Look at Therin from Samsonite. He is our first guest. We're going to intro him first. His link will be in the bio. You're going to want to follow his link when you hear the wisdom he is going to share on this particular topic today. So welcome to the table, Therin. I'm glad you're sitting down with us and having a little chat today.
Thank you. Glad to be able to join today. So thank you very much.
We're excited to have you. And our very own Miracle Mind Manu. The Miracle Mind Manu is here. Hey, Manu. He's going to bring in.
Melissa.
He'll bring all that deep, insightful wisdom that he brings to our leadership table. I love having guests that come back to the table to sit with us and so welcome to the podcast, Manu. Welcome back. And if you haven't followed Manu, he does a few of the leading the podcast on the Etech Leadership Table. So I encourage you to go follow Manu on that one. And then sitting right next to me at the table, because he usually gets in trouble, he's sitting right next to me at the table. It is Jim Iyoob. As a mom, I always kept one of my sons right next to me so I could kick him under the table. So if you see Jim jerk a little bit, it's because I've kicked him a little bit under the table. But absolutely, Jim, you have to wrangle Jim to get him to sit at the table. So thank you for sitting with us at the table today, Jim.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this topic as well.
Yeah, and if you are not following Jim, well, never mind, you probably already are. So just forget about it. I was going to tell you to go follow him. It looks like everybody.
My dice.
Oh, he's got his dice ready. You're going to hear about this. This is a podcast where you'll learn a little bit of everything, Therin. So just get ready for it, okay? So if we talk about, can you hear the whispers before the scream? Before we get started, I'm going to tell you just a quick story that I heard John Maxwell. Y'all know John Maxwell. He's one of the world's leading authors on the topic of leadership. He told this story one day, true story. He said he was a pastor before he actually was this world-renowned leadership author. He said he walked in, I was pulling up in the parking lot of his church one day, and there was a gentleman sitting on the steps, and he had his hands in his head in his hands, and he looked extremely distraught. And John got out of his vehicle, and he walked up, and the gentleman was visibly distraught. And he's like, he realized who he was, and we'll just call him, Manu. No, I'm just kidding. We'll call him John for example. But he's like, John, what's the problem? And John said, my marriage ended this morning. And the other John, Mr. Maxwell, looked at him and he said, no, it didn't. And the gentleman said, yes, it did. He said, it ended this morning. And Mr. Maxwell says, no, it didn't. And the man raised his head up, and he was very upset. And he said, what are you talking about? Yes, it did. And he said, no, it ended a long time ago. It just showed up today. So that kind of reminds me of this topic that these gentlemen are going to talk to us about. Can you hear the whispers before the scream? There are apparently, even in relationships with our customers, a marriage, there are whispers before the scream, right? But Therin, when we talk about customer satisfaction, these whispers before the scream, there's some early warning signs. Just like Mr. Maxwell was trying to explain to that man that there were some early warning signs. His marriage didn't just blow up that morning. So what are some early warning signs, do you think, Therin, of customer dissatisfaction?
Well, I'll relate it to our industry specifically. It could be a decrease in sales, a change in consumer purchasing patterns, or an increase in returns. So I'll label those three things as just in the retail space of how you can start to give some or see some of those early warning signs in general. So I think those are the three things that are early warning signals in our particular industry. But I like to kind of peel it back a little bit more and to talk about the things that you have to detect those early warning signals. So I'll give a one quick example and then two industry, I guess, standards. One quick example is that we were seeing in our CSAT score, it would fluctuate. So we dove into channels and found out that our email channel wasn't meeting the 48-hour service level that we told consumers we would get back to them in that window or time frame. So we started to talk about what can we do to minimize the email contact volume, and then shifted to maybe chat or SMS, which had a higher CSAT and NPS score. So by doing some creative things on our websites, and then also by starting a 24/7 self-help chatbot, we're now starting to see that channel optimization and consumer contacts spread out. And in return, we're starting to see our CSAT and NPS score be more level and not fluctuate up and down. So I think, that's a story, but that wouldn't have happened without good leadership, right? So who are you hiring? Are you hiring the worker bee? Or are you hiring the person that has forward thinking and that can have some insight and notice trends and business standards? So I would give that as, again, one of the ways that we were a little bit proactive and what we did. And then also some of the things that you can see in our industry. And again, change in purchase patterns, increase in returns, and increase and decrease in sales. So those are some of the early warning signals that we have in our industry. One case example, and then, what can you do about it? So just making sure you're getting the right people in the right seat and getting those proactive and forward thinkers in-house.
Oh, you took that a different direction than I've taken tons of notes here, but you showed us, definitely some early warning signs. But when you said peel back, you went all the way back to the hiring process. That's very unique about looking for people. I call it a heads down and heads up approach. Like you have people that are just heads down doing the job. And then you have to have people on your team that are heads up, like looking and like, what does returns mean? Like, why are people returning things so often, and kind of digging into that. I think that's good. Manu, when you hear Therin talk, I know that you guys have a relationship and you guys have worked on a couple of things. So what do you want to add to that? Or if you have anything that you want to mention about when we talk about the, early warning signs?
Oh, absolutely. And Therin, the way you said it, that was amazing. You have to have the data, but it's more important to have the right people as well. That was perfect, actually. You have to have people who are actually actioning on that information. And one more, something to talk about when it comes to early warning sign is when at some point it becomes easy for you to understand when you're talking to customer one-on-one, like you're sitting with the customer over coffee, understanding what their issues are, and then being able to action on it. But what do you do? What 1 million of them are speaking at once? And that's when it's very important to be able to understand your customer on scale by listening to those conversations. You can, sometimes you send out surveys, sometimes you do focus group, but what surveys people, 8% people reply, 9 at max. When it comes to focus group, that's like 50 people at max. But if you could take all the conversations that your customers are having with you and focus specifically on the insights that you're getting from them, now you don't have to wait until an escalation reaches a level where maybe the NPS is fluctuating, or you are suddenly getting a lot of, the sales have reduced. So understanding customer, understanding each conversation and being able to react to those helps you ensure that you are, reacting to customer issues before they become a problem.
Mike, if we could do that in relationships, if we could have something that could automate every one of our conversations with our relationships, I think we could fix the divorce rate. So I'm thinking this leadership table is about to solve the world's problems here.
You just gave me a product idea.
I mean,
relationship AI.
Relationship AI. Okay, Theron's onto something, Jim. I think he's onto something. Relationship AI, and that's. I mean, companies are doing it.
For that.
Jim, we know you can create a model this afternoon for it. We absolutely know, and we know your wife would really appreciate that model.
Oh,
so
yeah. Oh, yeah.
She can call
This
us
is my
about
life
that.
coach too, everyone.
I try. Don't hold me responsible. Don't hold me responsible for anything that he says. So, but I really do, like, we sometimes we, you know, even in relationships, and I know I'm tying it back, but it's the same thing. We care about our customers, right? Like they're our relationship that we have. And I know that we can't, you know, we can't sit down and have coffee, like Manu said, with one-on-one and really get an understanding, or sometimes these surveys people aren't filling out. But there is a way to get the data. And that's how we've got to hear what every conversation, we've got to be able to get the data around that to get the early warning signs. Okay. Those are some early warning signs. Those are some key things that the guys here with their great wisdom have shared with us. Let's scoot on into number 2. Number 2 is proactive versus reactive models. There are some models, some things that we can do when it comes to the satisfaction or dissatisfaction, to see, you know, the whispers before it starts screaming at us. Therin, do you have some things, the models that you're willing to share without giving all your secrets away? Do you have some models that you would willing to share with our podcasters?
Absolutely. And I won't say models, but just kind of little components. So I think, again, being able to spot any patterns, right? So just having someone having a pulse on your department or the industry overall. So being able to spot the patterns is huge. I think also just monitoring the engagement. I think agent satisfaction and consumer satisfaction kind of go hand in hand. So as your agents are getting super discouraged, what is it that they're hearing or responding to on a regular basis that's getting them discouraged? So I think there's a through line from the agent to the consumer. And as the agent starts to get a little bit more discouraged or angry, or they bring up red flags, that's directly related to feedback or information that they're getting from the consumer. So I think that's super helpful. And then analyzing, the support that you have. Do you really have, enough QA reps? Do you have a wonderful product like Etech that you're vetting and looking to, get into to give you more consumer insight? And then also just observing any changes. Whenever you make a business change or a business process improvement, how is that impacting all portions of the business as well? So those are some of the things. I don't know if it's necessarily a model, but some of the things have in place to start to see or detect those early warning signals or signs.
I think that's great guidance, because we have people sitting at the table that, they may be overwhelmed today. They're hearing only screams, right? And they just don't know, like, where do I start and what do I look at? And Jim, you're very unique. You're hearing what this wisdom that Therin's given, and you talk to, I'm going to say, thousands of people who own companies, people in leadership roles. They come to you obviously for help in some of these situations. So what do you have to say about where Therin is guiding us? And do you have a different take on some of these proactive and reactive models or components, what Therin was saying?
Yeah, no, it's great. And so since Therin opened up the door I heard him use the word bet. Okay, let's go with this. This is de-Simpsonized from my daughter, Brianna. In case you guys don't know, I dabble in a little bit of gambling. So if you think about, I'm going to tie it to chance or betting, as Therin said. So if you think about reactive customer experience in the world of betting, the response is after the damage is already done. That's what reactive is. The damage has already been done. It's similar to somebody who tries to recoup their money from a bad bet, right? And when you think about the proactive customer experience, I like to call it, because I think service is a bad word anymore. It's about that experience. So think of it as a strategic approach, similar to what I do with a set of dice. Yep. So you're anticipating that potential loss before they occur. You're managing your risk by preventing customer dissatisfaction. It's similar to a calculated gambler who uses strategy to minimize their potential losses. And what it does in the customer experience world is when you do this, it builds that long-term loyalty, which is really what a skilled player does by building a reputation of skill. If you think about the parallels between gambling, which people call it, I don't really call it gambling, right? Because it's more of an investment, and what you can do in the world. So like a reactive approach is really emotional, right? And it's impulse. It's impulse after it's done, or as somebody who's in a casino, they impulsively bet their favorite team without doing all the data decision metrics you need to understand to be able to bet. Where a proactive approach is all about calculated risk management, and it's strategic risk management. The goal for people in a customer experience world should be to transform that customer experience from a game of chance to a predictable, valuable, data-driven decision where the company and the individual consistently win by maintaining what we talked about earlier, those relationships.
Oh, wow. I know Therin's I see Therin taking notes too. Aren't we, Therin?
Jim, that was a golden nugget, man. I'm going to use that in my next QBR.
That's for sure. I'm taking notes here. And
I was going to say one thing. So Therin, I showed Melissa what people talk about gambling at my house.
Yeah.
Versus strategic. And I will let her tell the story if she chooses to, but I've proven that strategically, if you use data to make all of your decisions, you will win more times than you lose.
Yeah. I love the fact, and some people can sit on a podcast, they can sit on a webinar and a TV show, and they can talk about dice. And Therin, this goes back to your James Allen quote that I know that you said was your favorite one. And it says, people are anxious to improve their circumstances, but unwilling to improve themselves, and they remain bound. You shared that with me as your favorite quote. Yes. Jim is literally practicing what he's saying. Like, I went to his home. I've heard him talk about this, and he literally has a craps table upstairs with dice, and he is practicing his dice throwing. He's being, and I don't know if you wrote this notes down about a game of chance. Like, yes. He knows, and I know that was a golden nugget for me. You and I both were like writing at the same time, and I know several of our listeners are doing the same thing, but he is anticipating the loss, right? So he's practicing and so that won't be a game of chance. So he can, and I saw him win. Now, I have not went to Vegas and watched him win, so I'm not sure about that, but he's actually doing something to improve his circumstances. I don't know of anyone that I know of that wanted to do such a better job at, he called it investment instead of gambling. I don't know about that statement. I'm going to try to use that with my spouse on shopping. It's an investment. It's not shopping. It's an investment. But I understand what he means about the intentional approach. What did you like about what Jim said? Like, what were you taking notes about that you picked up? And Manu, I'm coming to you next on what you picked up as well.
So predictable, driven decisions. So that's what, that's kind of my thing that I drive every day is we all have feelings, right? Each and every one has feelings, and they come and go. The more we make decisions on that, it's kind of like the roller coaster, right? Because I'll be feeling one way today, and then an hour later, I'll feel differently. The consistent thing is data, historical data and information, and then making decisions based off of that. So that was the golden nugget that I took away. Just the predictable, data-driven decisions was kind of that phrase. I'm going to coin, Jim. You can't charge.
Watch out, because I think Manu he has a shirt with that predictive decision making typed in on it. So Manu, when we talk about the predictive decision making, what wisdom can you give us in that area? Because I know this is what you do every single day.
Absolutely. And Melissa, something that Jim said, and been working with him for more than a decade, and I know of him being one of the first person to actually talk about it. Small triggers actually make that big accumulative decision. So you have to listen to those triggers. And one of the triggers that he has always talked about is agent experience. We focus so much on customer experience. Sometimes we don't look at agent experience, which is directly proportional to your customer experience. And if you are able to map and understand when your agents are struggling to find information, when they are struggling to, be able to respond to customer because they don't have the right tools, or it's taking too long for them to respond, then you are proactively adjusting. By fixing this, you are proactively adjusting all of the future conversations where now they'll be able to do it quicker. So absolutely, when it comes to being able to manage things proactively, you have to ensure that you're looking at each one of those triggers. And one last thing, a lot of times when people think of proactiveness, they are only imagining, specifically in contact center world, they are only imagining pre-conversation or during conversation decisions. They're thinking, okay, this should happen either within the conversation or right before the conversation. But also learning from one bad call, but doing something about it right away so that you fix all the future conversation is just as proactive, because now you are ensuring your other customers don't have to go through the same problem that this customer did.
Yeah, this is why people sit at the table. This is why they sit at this table. That's why we are leaning. I can almost picture everybody leaning in and taking notes here. This is not just a conversation between the four of us. This is for everyone else who struggles in these same areas. And I'm here to remind everybody that this works in contact centers, and this also works in relationships as well. Like there's some early signs that we need to be prepared. And all of us, we have a job, but we also are human beings, and we have things we have to look for. And you may not be able to have a great program like Etech does to be able to analyze, but it makes you think about, it's not that one argument you got in, it's the totality of the situation that got you in the predicament that you're in. All right, lastly, we're not going to keep you guys at the table forever today, but let's go into communication breakdowns. We make this mistake in contact centers and other businesses. It doesn't matter. Jim and I were talking about this a couple of months ago. We just have communication breakdowns with our customers, with our clients, just in general, right? So I just want to go to each one of you. I'll start with you, Therin. What are some common communication breakdowns that businesses should be aware of? What do you want to say to us about that?
Well, I would just say, just make sure each department has a consistent touch point. So what I've seen sometimes is that, you have marketing, you have the contact center, you have the warehouse, you have all these different departments, and there's not a reoccurring touch point. Just to, one, keep each other abreast of the working cadences, or rather it be just business processes that are going on, things that you've noticed as far as trends in your particular department, and doing that cross-functional sharing. So I would say, just at the beginning, just making sure that setup can help with any breakdowns, and then also just making sure you're getting feedback from a customer perspective. That was internal, but from a customer perspective, just making sure that you're, paying attention to, your CSAT score, your NPS score, what consumers are giving you as far as feedback, and then noticing, whatever trends from an e-commerce perspective as well. So if your social media account is, blowing up, and that happens a certain time of year, how can you get in front of that? So I just think all business departments communicating and talking brings about, we would have less, I guess, breakdowns in communication if that would happen. But to give a direct, example, or some of those, I guess, business breakdowns is, I'll give an example of an inventory versus, product. So highlighting a product website, it's a hot selling item, but not having the touch points of having that person look at inventory to see, okay, we're down to 100 SKUs, right? Let's take that item off of the website. And what we may have encountered before is just overselling. So now we've over 1,000 pieces of product, and now we have to reach out to the consumer, suggest other products, for the consumer, and becomes a huge issue. And consumers are a little bit, they have other places to go nowadays. something as simple as that, just doing those small business proactive things, just communicating internally with departments, I think can help the company or organization overall.
There's something you said that I'm stealing from you, Therin. You said working cadence.
Yes.
And first, I want to say, if the rest of you at the table that don't know this, thank you for your service. Definitely in the U.S. Army. You're a veteran from the U.S. Army. So thank you for your service. And you're not just talking about working cadence. You actually lived out the working cadence. So when you translate this to our work environment, it's because you understand the importance, life or death, when we talk about working cadence with a team and looking at all aspects. So I just want to say thank you for that. And thank you for sharing the wisdom. I really do appreciate it. And I know that Jim and Manu feel the same way. And everybody else at this table, all the hundreds of thousands of people at this table appreciate you as well.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Hey, and Manu, let's talk about you. So there are some breakdowns on communication. Give me one that you think that you would guide us on communication breakdowns.
Okay. One thing, since, of course, I'll be talking about data. So when it comes to data specifically, one thing that we see very normally and common is that all the data sets have been siloed. Every system is generating its unique data set, surveys and so on and so on. But they are so siloed that only a specific team is looking at it and trying to make decisions very narrowly looking at their core role only. What organizations need to understand is when it comes to your conversational data, your contact center data, it's not just for your contact center. It's for your marketing team, it's for your product team, it's for your finance team, because it's your conversation, customers telling you what they want, what they don't like. So ensuring that all of your data systems are integrated and every department within your organizations have equal stake in that conversational data and understanding it will help you ensure that, as Therin said, you are working in cadence and building specific processes and improvement in place that will actually impact customer and not just check a box.
Very good. Very good. And Jim, I have sat with you in lobby after lobby and watching decision makers in these companies come to you because there's been a communication breakdown, right? So can you tell me some things that, maybe people don't have the opportunity to sit with you in a lobby and see what I see, how you're giving that wisdom to other people about. They come to you because there's a breakdown generally somewhere, somehow, customer internally, just the cadence in general. So what are some things you want us to be aware of?
So I'll talk about two off the top of my head. One, which is definitely a strength and a weakness. I think tone of voice, people accuse me or say that I'm mean, loud, obnoxious, all these things because I talk with passion. I believe in customer experience. So when I do change my tone of voice, it's this, people think I'm emotional. It's passion for doing what's right for the customer. So I do tend to talk about that. So I tell people, be cautious when you're using those nonverbal cues. Just because someone is raising their voice or talking with passion, it's not necessarily emotional. It could be passionate. The other thing I would say, if you tie this to one of my hobbies, which we'll call nonverbal cues, like if somebody's playing poker, people look at all these things. When I talk about communication breakdowns, it's similar to misreading dynamics in a game you're playing. So any successful interaction requires you to be able to use those subtle signals or triggers, as Manu calls it, and being able to adapt your strategy on what you're doing. See, in the end of it, effective communication involves recognizing and responding to both verbal and nonverbal signals, just as a skilled person who plays in a casino can read their table they're playing at, read the energy at the table. It's funny because like when I play craps and I see people who will lose, they get all emotional and they get upset. They start blaming the table. They start blaming the guy next to him because he was wearing a purple shirt, or all these these crazy things, and you know, it's similar to when I see people play roulette, black or red, and I tell people like, oh look, it's been red 17 times, black is due. The ball has no memory. 100% random. There is no memory. Now the difference in a slot machine, and you've played my slot machines at my house, that's a predetermined. Once you hit that button, it's predetermined. So the long story short is effective communication needs to involve the recognizing of all of the things we've talked about there and Manu, to actually be able to not only read the data, and by the way, I haven't shown you my latest shirt, Melissa. I have a shirt that Chandra bought me. It says, "Show me the data."
Oh, good. I love that one.
Use the data to make your decisions, but be cautious of the emotional side of it, right? And be cautious and not to show authentic concern.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
love that. Okay. Well, you know, we started talking about a whisper, and he's saying just because it's loud, it still can be a whisper. That's what he's saying. So the whispers into the scream. So we've walked ourselves down from whispers and communication breakdowns. You guys have given us some guidance on the whispers to look for proactive versus reactive, and then some early warning signals. So we are armed right now with things that we can do to prevent the screams, being proactive, right, instead of reactive, not only in our personal lives, but in our business professional lives. So I just want to thank you guys, and I hope that you come back and sit at the table with us soon. Therin, I cannot wait to meet you in person. Absolutely. I can't wait to that. I appreciate you being on today and just sharing your wisdom. We've got everything covered from marital advice to gambling advice to the cadence of business and all the data we can handle for the day. So I think that's what we can handle in today's leadership table episode. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you on the Etech leadership table. See you later.